My name is Richard. I'm a psychotherapist, coach, entrepreneur, creative, improvisational person. And this channel is about personal growth and creativity. What I want to talk about with you today is a more realistic understanding of what it really means to do your work, to do your inner work. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about this in the culture and in the self-help therapy pharma industries. And so what I would like to do in this video today is to give you a very realistic, honest, sobering take of what is really required to actually move forward in your life, to change aspects of yourself, to move through difficulties or traumas. If you understand this better, it will lead to less confusion, less suffering, less disillusionment along the way, and I also believe a much more efficient process because you actually know how the process works, what the path sort of looks like. And I just want to dive right in with an analogy of personal growth. So we can think of our psyches like a home. It's the home we live in. And if we want to make some changes to that home, assuming we know what changes we want to make, maybe we have to figure that out too. But let's just assume for now that you actually know the direction you want to move in your life. If you want to do some renovations in that home, there are several stages to that. You have to first imagine, oh, I'd like to change the kitchen, or maybe you find a problem, the bathroom's leaking, or maybe the problem is very, very deep, like the basement foundation is cracking or collapsing and the whole house is going to collapse if we don't deal with this really foundational problem. So whether it's out of desire or out of a kind of emergency or whatever it might be, you decide you need to renovate your house. Okay, so you have an idea, let's change this. But then there's probably a design stage. How do you want to do it? What do you think about this? What do you want the cabinet here? How big do you want the cabinets, etc. in your new kitchen, for example? And then, of course, you have to actually do the work, the manual work. And that itself can be very granular. You put in the cabinet, okay, the measurement's actually 1/4 of an inch off. What do we do with that 1/4 of an inch? Like, there's a lot of dynamic decisions that go on along the way. The thing with a physical home is that if you wanted to, if you had the money to do it, you could literally just hire a designer, say, give me a new kitchen. I don't care what it is, just make it beautiful, do the work. I'll pay for it all. I don't even want to think about it. Just do it. You can do that in the physical world. The difference with inner work is very important because I think when clients first come to see me, they often see me much more like a contractor and much less like a kind of guide for attention and awareness. And that's actually what I am, as a guide for attention and awareness. I'm not a contractor. I can't do the work for them, but they will assume that I will at least do some portion of the work for them. So what's probably most common is people come in and they have an idea of where they want to be. I want to be more confident in my job. I want to stop arguing with my wife so much, something like that. But what they don't realize is that they're at the kind of pre-design stage, to use the architecture home analogy. They do not see the amount of work that's going to be required to actually remodel the kitchen, remodel the relationship, remodel this very deeply seated pattern in themselves, or the most challenging work, remodel their fundamental attachment system with developmental trauma, early abuse, neglect, etc. So the extent of renovations required in the home will determine the amount of work and design and all of that that's required. If you are doing basically a gut renovation, which is what really deep work can be, coming in with the idea and hoping that 10 hours later with your practitioner, your life will be solved is a very unrealistic and impossible expectation. So if you want to redo the kitchen and put in hardwood floors and vault the ceilings and add an extension to the back of the house and fix the foundation and have craftsmen from Italy come in and like do like incredible like built-in woodwork or something like that, wonderful. But it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of design, a lot of implementation, a lot of work, a lot of energy. So the same basic principles are true of our psyches. The only difference is that the mind, the psyche, is, in my view, the most complex thing that exists in the entire universe, as far as we know. 50 trillion neurons, all wiring together. It's an unfathomably, beautifully complex system that actually is our whole bodies, but brain, gut as well. It's a very complex system. So it is infinitely more complex than a home and renovating a home. So that's where the analogy starts to break down. But the point is that if you are a client or if you are a practitioner talking to a client about what's required, it is, I think, really important to be honest about the extent of the work that will be required. The other way that the analogy breaks down is that if you are paying a contractor to remodel your kitchen, they're the ones that, have the sweat and the energy and whatever to do it. But even more than that, even if you're the one that is doing your own home maintenance, a kitchen does not challenge your identity structure. A kitchen does not challenge your primary relationships. A kitchen does not make you feel fundamentally unsafe in the world unless you shoot yourself with a nail gun or something. So what's required of inner work is also infinitely harder than typical manual labor, hiring a contractor, whatever, because it will require you to face your fears. Fears that you might on some level truly believe will completely annihilate you, if it's the case of trauma, extreme trauma, for example. But even if you've had good enough parents, very loving, good attachment, whatever, they'll have messed up somehow and you'll still be confused because you're a neurotic human like everybody, as Freud would say, normal neurosis. So there will still be stuff that you will have to face. Your identity will be challenged. Maybe you made a choice for one profession and it seemed good and now it doesn't work for you anymore. Maybe you're having the midlife crisis or whatever. So even for people that have pretty good lives and pretty good attachment system and all of that, even then it can still be very difficult work. You're going to have to step into the unknown. You're going to have to run experiments. You're going to have to try things that you've never done before if you want to move forward in your life. So my beef with the culture that I want to share here is twofold. The general culture is just very psychologically naive. We have done incredible stuff with the material world and really alleviated a lot of unnecessary suffering, childhood mortality, et cetera, like, wow, like we are much safer and healthier than, our ancestors of the past. What a gift. But at the same time, we have not taken up the other half of the equation, not just the outer material world, but our inner world, which is at least as important as the material world. I would argue that the material world is a manifestation of our inner worlds, that we build things based on what is happening in our interiors, based on our beliefs, based on what we value, etc. So for me, the inner world is actually primary. And it's really unfortunate that schools spend, 12 years teaching kids history and math, and all of that's very important. But there's no teaching of how one's own mind works. So there's no self-knowledge that is inculcated in young people, let alone in college. Sure, you can study psychology, but it's an objective thing. It's not, how do I understand myself? How does my mind work? How do the structures of my mind interact? So there's just a lot of naivete. So that's my first criticism, is just that we are a very psychologically naive, and my own term that I've coined, we are a body blind society as well. We're very disembodied. We are not connected to our felt experience, to our intuitions, to the gut sense that we need to make good decisions in the world. And I think this is the source of a lot of distress and suffering and conflict in our society today, is because people don't actually know themselves. And so they're just taking on these kind of superficial internet manufactured identities, and then they're fighting amongst each other with those superficial identities, which is kind of a way to avoid really knowing oneself. That's my depth psychology view. The other way that I find a lot of distortions is that there is a, let's say, niche market for self-help, psychotherapy, coaching, Tony Robbins, adventure, whatever it might be. And those are often grossly oversold in terms of what they might do for somebody. Just like it would be ridiculous to imagine having an idea for a new kitchen and then having a couple calls with somebody and magically the new kitchen is just installed and everything's working great. And that's just a kitchen. It's equally absurd to think that you will have some like profound transformation in your 5 to 10 sessions with your guru or your CBT therapist or your intensive retreat or whatever. They have some value, of course, to the extent that it's experiential and real and relational and genuinely curious, though these programs often aren't that. But they could give you something, but they're not going to give you what they promise. Just like the self-help book section at a bookstore, a lot of smiling faces, like the drug commercials. It's just like you don't even know what drug they're selling, but like there's a dad playing soccer, so I guess taking this drug I can't pronounce is going to cure something. My life's going to be great and I'm going to be happy forever or something. Like the marketing is just such BS. The reason that I loathe this is because not only is it lying to people that might actually be seeking in earnest to move through whatever barriers and become a more realized person, but it also sets people up for an almost guaranteed disillusionment. I'm going to go to the weekend intensive and wow, and everything's going to be great after. But it's not. So maybe it was my fault. Maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe something's wrong with me. So the point is, if you set yourself up for false expectations, you're going to be confused, angry, disillusioned at yourself, at the system, whatever. Maybe as you should be if it's the system that's lied to you and not delivered the promises. So what I want to do here is, again, whether you're new to this or whether you've been practicing as a therapist, healer, whatever, for many, many years, to really be honest with yourself or with your clients about what this work really entails. It entails an incredible amount of work, a gut renovation on a home times 1,000. One step at a time, and it's scary along the way, even terrifying. It requires so much of one's life energy, really, to do this work. So now you might wonder, well, I'm not selling you anything here. I'm just scaring you away from doing any of this, right? And on the one hand, maybe that I might be doing that a little bit, and I think that that's a good thing because you don't have the energy to sustain the work if you are living in the illusion that it's going to be easy, that your childhood trauma will, I'll just see a therapist for a few months and work this out. So the really deep-seated stuff, you never really fully work through, but it'll take 5 or 10 or 20 years even to really come to more peace with really terrible childhood stuff. So you've got to know that and really strap in for a really long ride if that's what you feel motivated for. So again, it sounds like I'm basically telling you to not work with me or to not ever do any personal work because it's too hard. But I'm not actually saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're ready for the journey, then there can be a tremendous upside because you can sustain yourself. You'll know I am in this for the long haul. This is Homer's Odyssey that I am going out onto. I remember when I was a kid, Odysseus, I believe, took 10 years and then came back, something like that, suffered all of these trials and temptations and challenges and battles, and it's just like, whoa. And I remember as a kid reading it and thinking, who would do something for 10 years? That's so long. Why would you go out for 10 years? Like, my summertime is like already like infinitely long. But now that I'm a bit older, I realize that 10 years is like kind of a par for the course for a real Odyssey. So I think this is where mythology can really instruct us. Throw out all the BS fake guru stuff, just empty it out of your head like water when you're getting out of a pool, just let it drop out and try to replace your framework with something much broader and more mythological. And the myths give us a lot of instruction for what this path actually looks like. I think of Indiana Jones going through the tunnel and the blades are swinging and the cobwebs, and then he's got to step onto this invisible bridge, leap of faith. Like, you have to step out, you might die, but the bridge is probably going to be there if you step out. This is the path of doing truly transformative inner work. It will take everything. It is the journey of a lifetime, the adventure of a lifetime. The other analogy that I will give is one of sports training or martial arts. So you are training your being to have more capacity. And I did another video on all the things you could do with a therapist, so I won't get into all of it, but like, you are training to build yourself to have more capacity, more self-knowledge, more confidence, more strength, more resilience in different situations. So really take it up in a training mentality. If you want to be an NBA basketball player, you can't contract that out. You can't do it twiddling your thumbs, not really paying attention 1 hour a week. So you can really ask yourself, what are my goals? Where do I want to get in my life? And if you're kind of just happy with where you're at, well, then why make a great sacrifice? But if you see, wow, I know relationships could just be so much more beautiful and intense and intimate. I just know this in my heart and I want to get there. Then commit like the NBA basketball player that knows he or she needs to train and do maybe an incredible amount of work. So whatever your goals are, prepare your mind for like, wow, this could be many years and I might have to give a lot to this. And that's just what the journey requires. So don't see your therapist or coach as a contractor. See them as a partner, a team member for you to learn. Michael Jordan is the one that's actually on the court and the one that's doing the training. The coach helps him, but it's up to him to get up at 5 a.m. and run up the stairs like Rocky or whatever. That's on the client. So what is the role then of the therapist, coach, guide, mentor, practitioner? Briefly, could make another video about this. The role is to direct attention, to notice patterns, and to be in a resonant, meaningful, felt relationship with the client so that the client can see things about themselves they haven't before because they're getting it reflected back, but also to have the opportunity to try on new experiences with the therapist or coach. In order to really be born into the world, we need to experience in relationship these parts of ourselves. That's how we really get to know ourselves, is through relationship. Anyway, I made much longer comments about this in another video. So my point is just see your therapist, coach, guide, whatever, as somebody that is helping you to pay attention to things you didn't notice, that weren't conscious, patterns that you didn't notice in relationships and your life and the outside world. And also, I would say, fundamentally going back to the home analogy, helping you to find a blueprint for where you want to go. The difference is that the blueprint is not drafted, but discovered. I believe, because I've seen it, this is very evidence-based, this isn't some woo-woo thing. We each have a blueprint within us. The blueprint isn't, quite like right-angled lines and, it's not like an architecture blueprint. It's more like energies that move more in one direction than another direction. That what I would call a soul is there's compass points. We are meant for some things and not for other things. The person that loves to paint was not destined to become an accountant. The person that loves to do the entrepreneurial thing probably wasn't destined to be a stay-at-home parent or whatever, or vice versa. So the point is that the other thing that your therapist or coach should be helping you to do is discover the blueprint, never telling you what you should do, but helping you to find within what is the blueprint. Okay, now we know what the renovation could kind of look like. Now let's actually start to build it out in our psyches, in our relationships. Let's work out all the little granular details. Let's do it one moment at a time. That is really the incredible value that a good, seasoned therapist or coach that has done a lot of their own inner work, because that's the only way they can be good at this. That's what that could look like. If you are prepared to take a lot of responsibility, that's the right mentality. Just like a home, it's kind of our home, but we also kind of inherit it from our parents and our culture. We kind of move in, so to speak. We might not like some things. We might not like the 80s, drab drapes that are hanging over the windows. But if you get stuck in a victim mentality, if you believe, I got a bad hand in the game of life cards, there's some use to just expressing that because it's a real feeling. But at a certain point, you have to take a radical responsibility. This is just my lot in life. I was born into this family with this amount of money, with these traumas, with these intergenerational patterns, with this level of intelligence in my DNA or whatever it might be, with these health conditions. At some point, the most efficient way forward is to say, yes, this is my situation. This is the prima materia of my life. How do I work this stuff? How do I transform it into something that feels more true for me, more authentic, more beautiful for me? So the blueprint is within us. We are wounded and confused and turned around and whatever by our upbringings and life's just traumas and whatever. It's true for every human being. But we have to say, okay, this is my responsibility. I'm going to take this up. I'm going to maybe hire somebody to help me to do this. I know this work is hard. I know it's going to ask a lot, and I'm going to keep going and have some courage and trust that wherever I get to, it'll be a little bit better than where I am right now, even if there's a lot of pain along the way. And maybe it'll be worse too in maybe the short run. You have to, again, maybe end a marriage, you find out. You didn't want to have to do it, but you realize that's actually what's true. So it might even be more painful. Even if there is some really wonderful upside that is potential or maybe there in the long run, you have to prepare for that. That might not happen. You might actually just be devastated when you find out what's really going on in your inner life. And so the real commitment, this is so important, is not to any specific outcome, but to living truth in yourself, being honest with yourself. That it's my view that there's an inherent satisfaction in saying, all this is messed up. I'm not really getting what I want out of life in so many ways. I'm so angry at the world or at God or whatever. But the one thing that I get to keep is my authenticity. What Socrates died for, really, is I'm not going to give up the only thing that really is valuable, which is my own inner alignment, my own honesty. I will not live a lie in myself. That to me is the deeper commitment. The suffering, happiness, or pain are almost a higher or less important level than this fundamental connection to self. So that's the real upside, is I get to feel myself. I get to feel alive, even if that aliveness is a lot of grief, a lot of alienation, a lot of loneliness. At least it's real. At least I'm not living a dissociated life. At least it's not a lie. And at least my relationships, to the extent that I have them, maybe I'm disappointed with a lot of them, but at least I get some more real relationships. So that to me is the ultimate upside. Not necessarily the fancy cars or the I'm happy forever now or all this crap that is sold to you. So that would be my pitch for why to do this work, because you want to know yourself as you are and accept yourself as you are. However beautiful and painful the soup, the mix of your inner life might be.